everyone, this is Little Kropotkin.
Well, good evening. This is Dr. Spike 1.
And I've been following this little discussion lately on YouTube, and it's getting a little bit, I'm getting a little bit sick of it.
Yes, me too.
So I thought I would just throw in my 2 cents and leave it at that.
I'll tell you what, I'll give you a nickel's worth.
First off, I have to say that I do agree with the basic premise of Bionic Dance's argument.
So you agree. So you believe that what Bionic Dance says is true.
Yes.
All right. Let's understand that you believe.
Babies are atheists. No matter how much it means to you, atheism is just simply the lack of belief in a deity. That's all it is.
No. That is just one definition of the word atheism. To have an opinion on something, you have to know about it first. You cannot have an opinion on something you know nothing about, you've never heard of before. And an opinion is a belief. You can look it up. Opinion, belief. They're virtually the same thing. It's your idea on the subject. And without the subject matter, there's nothing to talk about.
Atheism is not skepticism. Atheism is not empiricism. Atheism is not rationalism.
Yes, I'm an atheist. I'm a non-believer. I'm a skeptic. I'm a humanist. I'm a rationalist.
It's compatible with a multitude of different philosophies, but it is one idea on one issue.
Bingo! Right there. First you said one thing, now you're getting to the heart of the matter. It is an idea on one subject matter. And what is your idea? Your idea is that God does not exist. It is the belief that on the subject matter of God, which there's only one of two possibilities, that your belief is that it isn't there. It doesn't exist. The lack of belief is another definition to better describe the first definition.
And it is simply, in its most basic form, a lack of belief in deities.
In its most basic form. But atheism goes beyond that. It is not just simply the lack of belief in gods. Anything can have a lack of belief in gods. Here is the remote control to my TV set. It has a lack of belief in gods, doesn't it? Any inanimate object has a lack of belief in gods. So just using this one definition is tying one hand behind your back and expecting to win a juggling contest. It doesn't work that way. You just can't take one definition out of 10 and just go with that one and run with it. You have to have the full definition of atheism in order to have a valid argument on a subject matter, on the subject of atheism, on the subject of God, on the subject of our existence. This is where everybody gets confused and starts making up dogma on something that they think has no dogma.
Now, a user that I really like, Qualia Soup, explained this a lot better than I could, and better than anyone else I've heard explained so far, and I'll link his video about this subject down below.
And just because someone is more convincing than others doesn't make them true. Do you find the most convincing commercial on TV? Do you go out and buy the product right away just because he's got a very convincing argument? No. And just because that you have a very good circular logic to explain one idea doesn't make that any more true than when you started explaining it 12 days ago. The old accountant joke. What does 1 and 1 equal? Well, if you're an accountant, it equals anything you want. Well, I can take that circular logic and I can say 5 plus 5 equals 11. Just because I can create an argument, I can create a mathematical equation to make 5 and 5 come out to 11, doesn't make it true.
But people keep saying things like, well, we don't usually define people by what they lack, by what they don't have. BS. We do that all the time.
What logic is that? Is that another circular logic that you should accept just because it happens to fit your opinion, it fits your point of view, it fits your belief? So you're saying that just because people do it, we should just now accept it?
In a way, it's kind of like the word virgin. I mean, like, the word virgin just means a person who lacks sexual activity, and the exact definition of what exactly that entails may vary from person to person and from definition to definition, but in its most basic form, it just means someone who is sexually inactive.
No. A virgin is a person that never had sex. A person that doesn't have sex is something different. For say, I had sex 5 years ago, but I haven't had sex since. That doesn't make me a virgin. Now you're just taking words and you're twisting them and you're making them form what you want to believe is the truth. It's, like I said, it's all belief. Belief, belief, belief. No matter how you look at it, no matter how you take it apart, no matter how you reassemble it, it's still belief.
So yeah, technically, all babies are virgins too. But we never think about it like that. It doesn't matter how much opportunity they've had to have sex, or how much opportunity they've had to develop a belief. Now, everyone who disagrees with this argument keeps saying that the reason it doesn't work is because it means that we can classify inanimate objects as atheists. And this is infantile. It's completely infantile.
And it goes against your belief. So therefore, you dismiss it.
Technically, all babies are virgins. So yeah, technically we can classify inanimate objects as atheists. And Qualia Soup, again in his video, which I will link below, conveys this quite well.
And I could convey how you should buy some oceanfront property in Arizona and convey it quite well. It doesn't mean I'm right.
But I'll just reiterate the basic argument that he was making. When we're talking about beliefs of any kind, it's just implied that we're talking about human beings.
Right there you go. Belief of any kind. Bingo.
I mean, if I asked, who on YouTube is still a virgin? No one would say the play button. Because it's implied when you're talking about beliefs, ideas, and qualities that only humans can have.
You could have sex with the play button, I guess.
By definition, you don't generally need to qualify that, who is a virgin that's human, or who is an atheist that's human. Generally, these are just qualities that only humans can have. So no, you don't need to broaden it to, inanimate objects.
Alright, let's not broaden it to inanimate objects. Let's broaden it to living things. A dog that is, say, 3 years of age, and it has been well trained, and it can obey your commands. You can say, Spot, get me a Michelob beer, not a Miller beer, not a Bud, but a Michelob. And the dog goes down to the fridge, opens the door, and then looks at you to make a choice. Oh, I meant a can of beer. And so he gets the can of beer, he opens it up with his teeth, he brings it to you, and you have your beer. That dog has a better thinking process than a baby. It also lacks belief in God, because it can't understand the concept of God. That doesn't make it an atheist, does it? Well, then an atheist is not a baby.
It's a similar argument to, if we allow gays to marry, then we can allow people to marry their couches. No, you don't. Because marriage is something it's implied that humans can do it. It is a human action. You don't need to specify that this doesn't include couches or dogs.
But before we talk to Mark, let's meet his wife. Please welcome her to the show, Mark's wife. So you actually had a ceremony where you married this horse?
Yes.
But you're saying where you live, this is legal?
Yes.
Your whole argument is on the speculation that what's good for the goose isn't good for the gander.
Now, Napalm and Ashes the Raven brought up the point that babies are predisposed to belief, because they're very gullible and they're that way naturally. Well, my response to that would be, well, so are all of us. All of us are tuned to believe. All of us are gullible.
Right there. All of us are tuned to believe. And no matter what our opinion is, that is our belief. If our belief is that a God does not exist, that is a belief. If it is your belief that babies are atheists, that is your belief.
Unless we're taught to think critically. And yet, we're still atheists.
You're taught to think critically, but yet you're still using circular logic.
And again, atheism is not skepticism.
Yes, atheism is skepticism. The subject of God. Well, I think God exists. Well, I'm a skeptic. I don't believe that. I believe that God doesn't exist. I believe that the world created itself, that people just came up at random through evolution. This is what I believe.
Yes, I'm an atheist. I'm a non-believer. I'm a skeptic. I'm a humanist. I'm a rationalist.
Many skeptics are atheists, and many atheists are skeptics, but they're not the same thing. And then there are those who say, well, why are we even talking about this? Because the lack of belief definition is not that useful, and what's so great about the default anyway? Atheism being the default position is useful in two basic ways. First of all, it, as Puka said very well in his video, it eliminates the notion that atheism is unnatural, or that there's something inherently wrong with being an atheist. And yes, there are theists who will say that. The other reason that being the default is rather useful.
It's useful. Doesn't make it true. Saying 10 plus 10 equals 50 when I'm counting in my wallet, that's useful, isn't it? It doesn't give me more groceries at the grocery store.
is the fact that if atheism is merely a lack of belief, it means that the believer is the one making the positive claim.
It is just one claim versus a counterclaim. The subject of God is two possibilities, one thing for sure. There is or there isn't a God. We don't know this answer. If I take a coin and I drop it in a coffee can, close the lid, shake it up, I can say that I believe that this coin landed on heads. Another person will say, I believe that this coin landed on tails. Another way to examine this is to say, I lack belief that it landed on heads. And what does that mean? It means I believe it landed on tails. I don't insist on a counter argument that it landed on heads versus tails. I don't think that someone owes me an explanation. It's just one belief versus another. Atheism is not the default position. It is a position. If you don't want to be a Christian, you can also be a Muslim. You can be a Buddhist. You can be anything you want. Atheism is the choice amongst many beliefs. The default position is not existent. It's a circular logic, and people are just swallowing it hook, line, and sinker. It's the new dogma of atheism when people say there is no dogma.
Which means the believer has the burden of proof, and it completely eliminates that BS argument, well, you can't prove there isn't a God.
Positive claim is belief on you. The only reason that we use positive claim and say that you have to defend it is so that we don't send innocent people to jail or kill them in an execution.
And also, just because a baby is technically an atheist does not mean that all of us believe in the same things as a baby does, obviously. A baby's atheism is implicit atheism, rather. It's not atheism that is backed up by any other philosophy that surrounds it, like empiricism or humanism. But it's still atheism, because it's still a lack of belief in a deity. But that doesn't mean that all atheists are like babies. Is it insulting or something to accept the fact that a baby doesn't believe in a God? A baby doesn't believe in a God, so it's an atheist. You either believe or you don't. And so because the baby does not believe in a God, by default, it is technically an atheist.
If you want to be technical, technically a baby is an agnostic. An agnostic is a person that is not convinced one way or the other on the argument. While lacking belief in God, they have no opinion on God. They also have no opinion on Darwinism. They lack belief in evolution. So how can you have it both ways?
And that, again, doesn't mean that I'm putting a baby in the same category as Richard Dawkins. People keep saying that, oh no, atheism is not a lack of belief. Then what is it? It's not necessarily a positive claim that there is no God, period. What better definition do you have of atheism? I'm curious to know. But that's about it. That's just my 2 cents on the issue. Have an honestly.